Good morning, good people. Happy Wednesday to you, and welcome to a Safe Space special edition. And I say it's a special edition because I just recorded and posted a video yesterday, but this morning I felt the need to post this video. And today we're going to be talking about the seasons of parenting. And this video is a very special dedication to my son Adrian, who is 20 years old, and he just left to go back to Japan, Okinawa. He is stationed there. He is a Marine. And the reason why I felt as though I needed to post this video, because this morning when I hugged him and he left, and he said, "Ma, I'll text you when I get into my first layover," which is in Minnesota or Minneapolis. I know there's an M and there's an N. Minneapolis. Thank you, Jacelyn. I felt the shift in our season, and anybody that knows me knows I absolutely believe in seasons of life, and I do believe Adrian and I have gone through two very distinct seasons in the past 3 years. When we think seasons of parenting, we think raising, we think empty nest, we think grandparenting, but there's actually quite a few transition seasons in there. And if you have more than one child, like I do, you're probably in different seasons with each child because each child is their own selves. I happen to be in two very different seasons with Jason and Adrian because they've got a huge age gap between them, and one's a boy, one's a girl. So, yes, ma'am. Yes, thank you. It looks cute. As you can see, the season I am in with Jason is we're still in elementary school. I just finished doing her hair, and she's making sure her hair accessory still looks good on her this morning. Whereas with Adrian, when I hugged him and he left this morning, I was looking at a very grown man. So this thought came across me this morning when I hugged him and I said, "All right, I let me know where you are," and he let me know what time he would arrive in Japan. So it would be about 5:20 a.m. for us tomorrow, but 6:20 p.m. for him tomorrow evening. And as he left, I know that when Adrian comes back stateside next year, he will actually not be in New York State. He will be in California. So my season of being the main gardener for Adrian's seed is now done. I'm just now, the gardener that comes and prunes and makes sure everything looks good and make sure he buys his seeds every season. But right now, I'm not the main waterer. So this morning, as I was, when he left and I came upstairs and I sat down, I said, "All right, and I thank God because anyway, I'll come back to it. I thank God because it really could have went a different way with Adrian, and he knows that. He knows that just like I know that. As Adrian was growing up, because you guys know I had Adrian pretty young, so I'm only 38 in 2 weeks, and he's 20. He's almost 21. So I'm a pretty young mom with a grown-up child. And when he was born, I was still a child. I graduated from high school 6 weeks later, with this brand new baby that was actually in the hospital at the time because Adrian had RSV. So he had some breathing difficulties when he was little, and I had to scramble to find someone to come and sit with him in the hospital so I could walk across my high school graduation stage. And that transition year from him being born until the time that I went off to college, so a little more than a year, about 16 months, was some of the darkest times in my life. I found myself arguing with my mom all the time, ended up in a shelter, ended up being in a domestic violence situation, being homeless for a little bit. And all the while, I was being told I would never, get out of the situation now. And these were people that I considered friends telling me this. My mother was not for me. There was such a disconnect. Adrian's dad, I'm not going to say anything negative about him because I've already gone through my forgiveness process of him. So what I will say is Adrian's dad was not a factor for Adrian throughout his whole 20 years. And I remember getting a phone, and I almost put Adrian up for adoption. I had a beautiful family that was willing to take him, and we had went through the process. But I remember a prayer that I had to God, which was, if I ever have children, I need my children to stay with me. I never wanted kids because I knew what had happened to me as a kid and to my brother and my sister. So I didn't want to put my own kids through that. And my fear was that that would happen. So I didn't want kids, and I was good with that. I've always wanted to travel. So no kids means I could travel like I wanted to. And then here comes Adrian. So I didn't allow the adoption to go through. To this day, I still think about Miss Shelby. She was very nice. She was very nice. I grew up with her daughter. She was very nice, and I knew he would have been in a really good home. But we kept pushing, and Adrian ended up staying with his grandmother on his father's side for a bit so I could start college. And when I started college, Adrian came with me about a year later. And in that year before he came, I had developed some relationships with people who are still very prominent in Adrian's life. If you saw my Facebook post last night, you saw, he was with his Aunt Shoma. That's been his road dog since day one. She has loved on Adrian like her blood. And so my nieces and nephews, Adrian is big cousin Adrian. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And throughout Adrian's life, people have constantly come in to help guide me because, again, I was still a child. But this morning, as I talked to God about it, and I said, Father, get him back to Japan as he should be. His life flashed before my eyes, and not in a negative way. And I had to thank God while I was in the shower because I raised Adrian out of my own fears. I was afraid the streets were going to take him, so I was hard on Adrian. Y'all don't get it. People laugh, they joke. Aisha, she's such a tough mom. But I was scared for my child. I did not want the streets to take him. I did not want the prisons to take him. I did not want any type of woman that could potentially ruin him take him. I did not want any of those things. So when Adrian did not go down the path I wanted him to go, I took it personal because I fought for him to be a good kid. Adrian never really had any troubles in school, like being a bad kid or anything. He had ADHD, yes, so we struggled with getting his work done and those things. But Adrian was essentially a good kid. He's very respectful. He's very nice. He's also very helpful. He's got a gorgeous smile. So he wasn't that type of kid. He had a big brother, as in the Big Brother, Big Sister program. And so he had his friends in Boston Spa. He's very active in the church. So he had our pastor to kind of mentor him. We had the Faltermeyers who stepped in and loved Adrian and made sure he came up to California every summer. Once they moved from New York, they would fly Adrian out and Adrian would hang out with their son and things like that. He also had, Aunt Shoma here and Uncle Darnell. He just had so many people that were watching over him besides me. And when he graduated from high school, my fears became almost as tall as me for him, because I was like, oh shoot, I don't know what's going to happen, because Adrian wasn't trying to make a move. He had failed out of college. And I took that personal. I was angry. I couldn't even be in the house with Adrian. So the season that he and I was in at that point was a season of turmoil. I remember going to one of my women's meetings that I have on Monday nights, and Sister Chris talked to us about intercessory prayer. And that night I came home and I began to intercede, like do an intercessory prayer for Adrian. And about a good few days into it, God said to me, you have to be quiet. And I was like, I can't be quiet. If I'm quiet, he can't hear me. And he says to me basically, well, if he can't hear you, how do you think he can hear me? I said, okay, whatever. But I shut up. But then 2 weeks, Adrian had joined the military. All I had to do was be quiet. I was so loud. I was so angry. I was so angry. Because I felt like I had failed as his mother. And he left for the Marines a few months later. When we went to go pick him up after basic training, we came back home, it was still Adrian. But he was cool. You could see the little inkling of a change. And then he left and went to Japan for the first time. And while he was there, he had to be humbled a bit. This is no kids play. This is you got to do what you got to do. And so some things didn't work like he wanted them to the first time. And I had to remind him, stop being so cocky. You got to put some work into it. And this time when he came home, I looked at him and I said, that's not a child anymore. That's a grown man, good-looking kid. And I'm not just saying it because he's mine. He's a good-looking kid. He's so handsome. And he just, all the kids were all over him. Adrian, 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 Adrian. Juju, Danielle, just Adrian. And I said, when he left this morning, his seed is now going to be planted somewhere else, and he will have to water it. I can sprinkle every now and again when I go to visit, but now is the time that he's going to start finding himself doing the things that a man does, and I'm so proud of him. The season of transition that I am in with Adrian now is, we went from to be 18 and be of age, and now I'm looking at him truly turn into a man. And I'm thankful for that. Because the seasons that me and Adrian had initially, they weren't good seasons. And I apologized to him for that. It took a lot of forgiveness within myself to be able to ask my son to forgive me. I didn't grow up with the support that I see other people give. So God put me in people's path that I could see how they did things in a different way. That wasn't the life I lived. My goal with Adrian was to make sure I raised him, that he got grown, he went to school, and he ate, and he was supposed to go off to college. There was no thought in there that I was supposed to come in and nurture and mother, because that wasn't what was given to me, so I didn't know. But what I had to do was end up taking parenting classes. I had to go through a lot of healing to be able to get there. And I had to go through a lot of forgiveness to get there. Like I told you guys, I had to forgive myself because I shouldn't have ever given Adrian my burdens to bear. But he did, and he did it quietly. He did it very, very Adrian-like. But I thank God for him, and I'm so glad to just see the season that we get to go through. I have a long while before I go into the season of grandparenting, a long while. But in that transition, I get to nurture our relationship. And when he brings, a wife to me, I can nurture our relationship between myself and her. And then we start nurturing these grandbabies. And I just, as we've walked through the life with Adrian, the people that have walked alongside me and said, we're here with you. We'll help you do what you have to do. And I have to thank God for that. When Adrian was born, I have to tell this testimony because it always sits right at the forefront of my mind when I watch Adrian. He couldn't have been more than 3 months old, but I think it was closer to 3 weeks. And I went through what every new mom goes through. We don't sleep. We don't know what's going to happen with the baby. And so Adrian, of course, slept in the bed with me, even though he had a crib. And I remember one night him being asleep. And I wasn't. And I heard him do a little cough. You snuggled right there. And I woke up immediately. I had dozed off. When I lived with my mom, I had, my bedroom had a window at the head of the bed and at the foot of the bed. And so when I opened my eyes, both of those windows were illuminated. And I jumped up and I ran into my mom's room. Her room was right next door. And I pulled the covers off of her face, and she was a demon. So I ran back into my room with Adrian. And when I got in the bed, the light was still there. And a voice very distinctly said to me, Aisha, if you do what I asked you to do, you and Adrian will always be okay. I knew who he was. At that point in my life, I was still very angry with God because I had had this baby and I felt like my life was over. Mind you, I was the one that made the decision to lay down, but I blamed God. Why would you put me in this situation with this baby and no help? But he has made sure I was okay. Even when you guys see me out here, when I was younger, I was partying all the time. Well, not really. But I would party and I would have a good time and stuff like that. I still was coming home to pray. I still wake up and pray. I still was in my Bible. He still pushed me towards him, and he brought Adrian with me. I used to go to this church, and they used to say to me, one day this lady came up to me and she was like, you are so sweet to bring your little brother to church with you every day, every Sunday. And I said, it's not my brother, it's my son. And she looked at me like I was crazy. But again, I'm a young mom. Or at that point, I was a young mom. Now I'm normal age. And so I brought Adrian up in the church. I always did, but I never forced it on him. But he couldn't stay home by himself. But even when he got older, he would come to church with me. Because he loved those kids. And he loved to be there with the pastor and just have a good time. So I'm walking into a season of a grown-up child. And it's not an empty nest because Jason is still home. But I know his season with me will never be completely over because he's mine. He's my child. But my grandmother used to say children are a gift, but they're not yours to keep. And I used to always, as a little girl, used to think she was talking about they were going to die. And that was not the case. You have to allow them to grow. You have to allow them to move forward and spread their wings and do as they're supposed to do. And as I look back on my life with Adrian, we've traveled together. That's my road dog. That's what I used to tell him. We used to go to the movies all the time. Adrian used to have the lit birthday party. Like, Adrian's birthday parties were the bomb. I stopped having house birthday parties after his kindergarten birthday party, and this little girl tried to do a little dance contest, and she was dancing too grown. I said, we're not doing that. We had our little pool parties, our movie parties. When Bowtie Cinema first opened up here in Schenectady, we had one of the first birthday parties there. They treated them boys like VIP. I watched his friends grow up. Sometimes they speak to me and I see them like, who the hell are you? But it's Adrian's friends, and they say, hey, Miss Aisha. And I'm like, what? I don't even know who this child is because they look so different. I listen to him talk about his friends now in Japan, and they're from all over the country and all over the world. And I just have to say thank you, Father. None of the things that I thought were going to happen ever happened for Adrian. He has exceeded my expectations past 100. And I just thank God for that. Guys, I am sorry I've cried through this whole video. Adrian, I love you so very much. I hope you get a chance to watch this, because you know I'm not going to say it in your face. But I love you. And I know you will make it back to Japan safely. Thank you, everybody, for watching me this morning. Have a great day.